it amazing how trends change so quickly? Remember when these things were so cool and everybody had to have the latest, greatest fidget spinner? You probably even had one that lights up or lit up and did all types of sort of tricks for you. And you probably got one from your neighborhood grocery store, as well as your church, as well as anybody that was trying to hand you these types of things. Now it seems that everybody has some other thing that's at the top of your must-have list. So I feel like I'm the only person maybe in the world that still uses fidget spinners. Does anyone of you out there use fidget spinners? If you do, join the club. We're pretty cool along. Now that's how trends work. In fact, when I was in middle school, you probably won't believe this because I understand that some trends, they come, they go, and they come back again, but I can guarantee you that this trend probably never, ever, ever will come back in style again, and it is the trend of wearing my clothes backwards. That was the thing back then. See, there was this music artist, this group, and one of the things that they loved to do is they had their clothes on backwards, and it was, believe it or not, it was a hit. So they would wear their jeans backwards. I don't know how that used to happen. They would wear their shirts backwards. I don't know how that used to happen either. But that was what was in when I was in middle school. I mean, that was crazy. That was pretty funny, right? Now, thankfully, most of those things have stopped trending, but there are some things that have stuck around since I was in middle school. In fact, they've been around even longer than that. And the one we're talking about today is something that I'm sure a lot of you have encountered already in your lives. It's not a trend, it's a feeling. One that I think many middle schoolers are familiar with. Ready for this? I'm about to drop this on you. It's the feeling of anxiety. Okay, so let's pause and break this down. I think as middle schoolers, a lot of us don't really use or think about the word anxiety all that much, you know? When we feel like we're under pressure, or worried, or feel restless, many of us would describe it as stress. And being stressed out, listen, I think we've all been there. Stress is our body and mind's response to certain situations in life. Now, maybe you made a bad decision and you're worried about how your parents will react. Stress. Maybe you have a big game coming up and you feel like your whole team is dependent on you. Stress. Or maybe you got into a fight with your best friend and you don't know how to repair their relationship. Stress. You see, when our thoughts or our situations in our lives make us feel frustrated, nervous, worried, or angry, our bodies and our minds react. That's stress. It can make our bodies do strange things like having sweaty palms, a rapid heartbeat, and even difficulty sleeping. It can also make us feel things like restlessness, nausea, and irritability. But you know what's surprising about stress? It's not always negative. And you're probably thinking, how can stress be good? When I'm worried about an upcoming test and can't sleep at night. When I'm about to play a solo in my band concert and feel sick to my stomach. How can those things be good things? Well, stress can be both positive and negative. In situations that upset the normal balance of your life, stress triggers your body to respond in ways that cause you to react. Sure, the stress of an upcoming test can make you restless at night, but it can also get you to focus and study even harder. Yeah, that drum solo can make you feel like you could throw up at any moment. But it can also give you the jolt you need to play your best. Stress is also usually short-term and a reaction to something specific in our lives. When the stressful moment is over or the situation is resolved, typically the stress goes away for the time being. But anxiety, well, that's different. While stress is a situational, temporary response, anxiety is different. Now, let me clue you into something. Anxiety is an overwhelming feeling of worry, unease, or fear that tends to hang around. It can affect our sleep, cause exhaustion and extreme distress, and make us unable to focus or control our worry. Anxiety generally affects us only negatively and continues after the stressful situation is no longer there. Situations change, circumstances get better, moments pass, but anxiety tends to linger. It's kind of like a fidget spinner that continues to spin, just over and over and over again. And what can be confusing about anxiety is that while sometimes we know exactly what causes these feelings, we aren't always able to pinpoint why we feel the way we do. Sometimes anxiety is just there and we don't know why. Now, for those of us who experience anxiety, the reality is that when it's there, it feels constant. It's a consistent feeling of worry, fear, or nervousness that can interfere with the way we live our everyday lives. And sometimes it's brought on by circumstances we experience, like the death of someone close to us, our parents' divorce, or an unexpected illness. But other times, it's just there. We can't seem to shake it, and we don't know where it came from. In those seasons, it's easy to believe anxiety is something we're just always going to feel. The moments of stress pass, but the anxiety never does. When a person has anxiety, it's a feeling that leaves them overwhelmed and worried for long periods of time. And anxiety can get to the point where it's hard to cope, change, and move on in positive ways. Now let's face it, as middle schoolers, there are a lot of things you can be anxious or stressed about in today's world. And even if you don't regularly experience the overwhelming and long-lasting feeling of anxiety, chances are really high that you have friends or loved ones who do. If that's the case, what do we do? If we want to be able to deal with our anxiety in healthy ways or support people in our lives who are experiencing these feelings, how do we do that? Believe it or not, someone who lived thousands of years ago actually had some great advice when it came down to navigating anxiety. This guy's name was David. He was the second king of the Israelites, which was the name of a group of people in the Old Testament. Now, David actually wound up being one of the ancestors of Jesus. But even with being king and part of Jesus' family tree, David still went through some intense rough patches. One of those tough times was when David found himself captured by some enemies. He was alone. He was scared. He wasn't sure how his circumstance was going to work out. This man, who would one day become one of the greatest kings who ever lived, was in a desperate and overwhelming situation. Now, what David experienced is probably best described as super stressful, but we can learn about how to deal with both stress and anxiety from how he handled his situation. In the Bible, in a book called Psalms, we can read about how David managed the stress he felt in this dangerous and fearful moment of his life. Even though David's stress was centered around his circumstances, I think what he said can help those of us who are working under the weight of anxiety every day. Let's look at what he said. "When I'm afraid, I put my trust in you." In this moment of fear and danger, David made the choice to put his trust in God. He understood that no matter what he was going through, he could trust the God who loved him, saw him, and would carry him through any circumstance. Here's what's encouraging for us. We can do the same thing. We can put our trust in God. When anxiety attacks us, we can trust God. When we're afraid, we can trust God. We can trust God enough to talk to him about our fears. When we're overwhelmed, we can trust that God sees us. When we feel stuck, we can trust that God knows the way out. Now, what David did was so simple, but so very powerful. He could have kept his eyes on his circumstances. He could have kept his focus on what was causing his stress. Instead, he put his eyes and energy on the God he trusted to carry him through it. And that simple act helped ease the feelings of stress and anxiety he was experiencing. Now, let me pause here. I realize that dealing with something as big and scary and overwhelming as anxiety isn't always this simple. Now, while sometimes saying, "God, I trust you," is all that it takes to wipe out every ounce of anxiety, it's not always that easy. While I certainly believe that God can do it, I also know that sometimes it takes more than shifting our focus and our trust toward God. We can know and believe in and trust God, but still experience a lot of anxiety. Trusting God is not always a quick fix, but it's always a step in the right direction. David's circumstances didn't change right away, but in that moment, he was able to direct his focus and give his fears to God. He reminded himself of what's true about God, that we can trust him no matter how we feel or where we find ourselves. While David may not have given us the 100% cure for our anxiety every single time, he did give us the starting point to deal with it. We can practice breaking the cycle of anxiety by choosing to trust in God. You see, while anxiety can be a powerful force in our lives, God is even more powerful. And because of that, we can trust him with all of our feelings. We can trust and believe that he'll provide us with what we need to navigate our anxiety. And we can trust God to give us the tools to support people in our lives who are experiencing anxiety too. Because here's the truth, God gives us the tools to handle anxiety. We can trust God to give us the tools we need to handle our own anxiety and to support others who are experiencing those feelings. Have you ever seen one of these things before? It may look a little familiar. It's a toolbox. Now, maybe you don't have one, but maybe there's somebody that you know that has one. But it's used to hold so many different tools, and we use the tools inside to build things or fix things or whatever the case may be. Maybe you need to hang a picture frame. So what you would do with that is you might use something as simple as a hammer and some nails. So it's a small job, and we just need a few things to get the job taken care of. But other times we need a lot of tools to get the job done. Maybe we're building an entire deck, so we need a saw. One of these things right here, maybe a hammer, I don't know. Maybe even a wrench. You know what, maybe I need even some pliers just to get the job done. You know what? I think we need every tool in our toolbox for that kind of job. Now, dealing with stress and anxiety is a lot like the tools in this toolbox. Like these right here. Now, there are different tools to help us with different things. And sometimes we need just a few of those tools, There it is. And other times we need all of them. So I might need the wrench, the saw, the pliers, everything. Either way is okay. God gives us all of the tools for a reason. Now, maybe you don't feel stressed often or struggle with anxiety. Chances are you know or care about someone who struggles with these feelings. And what's so amazing is that you are one of the tools that God provides to help them handle stress and anxiety. And because anxiety in particular can be long-lasting and overwhelming, it's important to know how to help your friend when they're struggling with these feelings. Because of the unpredictable nature of anxiety, the ways to support your friend may change. But here is where the rubber meets the road, and here is the practical application. Here are 5 ways that you can be there for your friend. First, be someone that they can go to and trust. Let your friend know that they can talk to you about whatever they're feeling openly without any fear of judgment. And it's so important that they know that you're there to listen. You won't try to change what they're feeling or thinking, and that your feelings about them won't change. Your friend may not know exactly what they need, and you might not know exactly how to support them. And you know what? That's okay. Sometimes all they really need is to know that you're there for them. Second, remember to listen more than you talk. And I realize that could be extremely hard for so many of us, but we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. But just be with your friend and really listen to them. And you know what? You can do this by making eye contact, putting your phone away, especially while they're talking, and not interrupting. Try asking them if they want to share what they're feeling, if they want to just hang out, or what you can do to help. Third, you don't have to fix their feelings. Tell your friend you're there to support them and that you care about them and how they're feeling. But remember, it's not your job to change or fix their feelings. Just be their friend. Next, celebrate their successes. When a friend takes a step towards confronting their fears and anxiety, celebrate with them and do something fun together. Help them feel proud of themselves for addressing the issue. And last, encourage them to talk to an adult, a parent, a small group leader, their school counselor, a professional counselor, and if they're afraid to, offer to go with them. Encouraging them to open up to someone who is older and wiser is so important when your friends are struggling. I just gave you 5 things that you could do if your friend is struggling with anxiety. If you're feeling that overwhelming, continuous, and long-lasting anxiety that affects your daily life, I have some tools that will help you navigate those feelings. First, I want you to identify your feelings. Think about exactly what you're feeling and, if possible, why you're feeling it. Now, maybe you're worried or scared or nervous, or maybe you're frustrated or uneasy. Whatever it is that's affecting you negatively, I want you to name it. And then try to find the source of those feelings. Like I said earlier, for those of us that experience anxiety, we can't always identify the cause of what we're going through, but just trying is a great place to start. Next, I want you to focus on trusting God by thinking about how big and how powerful and how loving He is. Think about how He can walk us through anything we might be feeling or encountering, because He can overcome all of it. Now, when we feel afraid or anxious or alone, we can simply pray, God, I trust you. Not only does that simple prayer remind us of what's true, it also helps us unlock another tool, the ability to shift our focus. As David showed us, one of the best things we can do when we experience anxiety is to take our focus off of what's overwhelming us. Instead, we can choose to remember what's true about God, that He's for us and He will help us. And last, I want you to seek out tools that God gives us. God has filled your toolbox with people like your small group leader, your parents, your trusted friends, and most importantly, professional counselors who can help you navigate your anxiety. God has given us access to things like medication and exercise and rest and other healthy habits to manage our feelings. They're all a part of the toolbox. In some seasons, you may need only 1 or 2 of those tools to get by, and others, you may need more. Either way, the best thing you can do is to get the help you need. Here are a few ideas of where to start. The first thing you can do is care for yourself. How are you taking care of yourself? Are you resting? Are you eating well? Are you exercising? Are you sleeping at night? Believe it or not, paying attention to each of these things can really be helpful. So the next time you feel stress and anxiety creeping in, try to take a step to care for yourself. Next, talk to someone. A counselor is a great place to start. They're trained to help you work through your feelings and move forward in a positive way. If you're nervous about this, talk to your small group leader, a parent, or a close friend, and ask them if they can help you take this step. Then, remember what's true. Make a habit of reading your Bible or simply reminding yourself of what the authors of Scripture and even Jesus Himself said is true about how valuable, loved, and cared for you are. This week, practice shifting your focus toward what's true for a few minutes each day. When you feel stressed or anxious, remind yourself of what's true over and over again if you have to. Now, I know stress can be really uncomfortable and negative, And I know anxiety can feel suffocating and it's like it's always around. It can feel like a mountain that you'll never be able to climb. But when you feel that way, remember this: God gives us the tools to handle anxiety. We can choose to trust that God's love can calm our fears, no matter if we're feeling the very real but short-term stress from situations in our lives or the long-lasting and overwhelming worry caused by anxiety. There's hope. When we put our trust in God and use the tools He's given us, we can find ways to move forward. And God gives us the tools to handle anxiety in our own lives and the tools to support others. So as we finish up today, I want you to ask yourself, what's one tool I can use to handle my stress or anxiety, or to support others who are experiencing those feelings? Peace. See ya.